Hi, welcome to Escapees webinar series. Tonight's topic is the future of RVing, and we're going to be talking with Ashish Bhattacharya, who is let's see, what are you?
Hi, Brandon. It's great to be with you guys. Just good enough to say I work with Winnebago. I'm deeply interested in talking to customers, and I work in the area of business development and advanced technology.
Nice. And so tonight's series, this virtual webinar, we're talking about the future of RVing, and this is part of our Wednesday evening series that we do. We'll do virtual campfires on some Wednesdays. We do our virtual Wednesdays with our escapers and our Hangouts groups as well. And tonight we're talking about the future. So let's just dive in. Tell us about the future.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's really great to be with you guys and to be talking to your audience. Winnebago, as you know, we spend a lot of time with the escapees. We like to be associated with you guys, and we always get a lot of encouragement and stimulation. So when you talk about the future of RVing, there are a couple of things I'd like to share. One is to say that many people say the future is already here. It just isn't evenly distributed. So when you look at some of the components of the future, you already do see some of the things that are teasers or advance notice of the future. Secondly, I think it's very important to keep going back to the customers and the users to say, what do you think is the future? Because it's very easy sometimes for people who build things, for OEMs like us, RV makers, to just go off and do something just because we can. But I think it's very, very important to make sure that you're always being customer-led and customer-driven, which I think is one of the first secrets of a successful company. So that's something that I would really talk about first about the future. That I would be delighted to hear from your audience, and I was in fact hoping that I would stay quiet most of the time, and your audience would be telling us about what they see in the future. But I'm happy to share a few thoughts as we go in.
I would love for you guys that are listening and watching, where do you think the future of RVing is going? What do you want to see? I'm sure our audience has lots of opinions about what RV should be like and what they should be doing and where they should be going. So we're all excited. I'm personally waiting for an RV that I can just tell it to take me somewhere, and then I can go in the back and watch TV while it takes me there.
Yeah. So I think autonomous is something that we talk about a lot, and definitely it's something which is coming. A few things about the RV industry we've got to keep in mind. One is that even with the number of people who love spending time in the outdoors, the RV industry is pretty small. When you look at the overall number of RVs sold in the United States, let's just say this year, it'll be about 450,000 RVs. And out of that, 80 to 85% of them are towables, and about 15-20% of them are motorhomes. So it's a pretty small industry when you compare it with the automotive industry. And there are some implications of that. And the implications are, one, that we depend on the automotive industry and our chassis suppliers to supply us with the chassis, right? So when you think about a Mercedes Sprinter, a Dodge ProMaster, you think about the bigger Freightliner chassis, these chassis come to us from the chassis suppliers. So to some extent, we are dependent on the features. So Mercedes Sprinter, for example, last year with the VS30, they came up with a major upgrade. And what you're seeing with these chassis is that many of them from the past, they are based on commercial chassis versus consumer chassis. So typically commercial chassis have a different roadmap, and there wasn't that much of a focus on some of the features that you're seeing in passenger cars. But now that's actually changing quite a bit, and I think that's converging where these guys are bringing these chassis together. And so chassis, I definitely see, continuing to develop. And while there are some things that we can do around the chassis, we still depend to a large extent on the chassis. So that's the first point I would make. The second point I would make is that for us, because we're such a small industry, what we have to do is we have to look at standard off-the-shelf components and systems. These are called, commercially available COTS, COTS systems, commercially off-the-shelf systems, and use those to build our system. So while we do manufacture some things, to a large extent, the RV industry are basically systems integrators. We bring in subsystems from various places, and our challenge is how do you integrate them in a relatively seamless way and make them such that they are easy to use, intuitive to use, and when people are going down the road at 60 miles an hour, that they're still functioning the way they were meant to function.
Now, are you guys starting to work more with the component suppliers to try to make it more holistic, so it's rather than just a component supplier building a water heater over here and then you stick it in over there? Is more of that starting to happen, or?
Yes, I think that is starting to happen. And what you see is that most systems, most products, they are becoming what we call smart connected products. And the word smart is just saying that there's a lot more logic and computer software, and the piece of equipment can broadcast a little bit more about its condition. And connected, of course, is that these products typically will have a Wi-Fi connection, and it might have the ability to receive commands over the air and transmit. And so what's happening with these is that now you can soon you'll be able to monitor these systems. So as an example, a typical issue, a refrigerator, if you look at a refrigerator as a unit, as long as the refrigerator is fine, it's fine. But there are some things which could go wrong with the refrigerator, which is the temperature inside could go high. You could get, the door might be open. You could have a compressor problem. You could have frost buildup in the refrigerator. So there are 3-4 things that could happen, which are typical, big issues that could happen with the refrigerator. And what you're seeing increasingly is that the appliance builders are building in sensors that can sense those parameters, and then they can transmit it. For the moment, I think we are still seeing suppliers who are working they work in silos. So, the refrigerator guy says, I'm going to do the refrigerator. The chassis says, I'm going to do the chassis. But that connectivity is not quite there yet. And I think I've heard that many of the SKP's members, what they do is they knit these systems together using their own technology, using maybe an Alexa, using maybe something else. And what we're looking forward to seeing is some of these things getting incorporated into the RVs in the future.
Nice. Yeah, I do know a few members in particular that have taken that to the extreme. I mean, we've even done it ourselves, just putting we'll put a temperature sensor in a bay or put one in the fridge to make sure it stays on. We've even done the old school way of just putting a cube of ice in a cup in the freezer. And if you come back and it's melted, then something happened.
Yeah.
I think technology is a big thing, and I know a lot of us want the RVs to kind of function like the houses do. It'd be great if you could just buy the house automated stuff and put it in the RV and make it all work together.
Yeah, no, that's right. And if you think about, for example, connectivity, right? I mean, you guys are working on the road all the time, and even if you're not working, you want to really be connected. I have a customer of ours in Winnebago. She's an emergency room physician, and she travels around the country, does telemedicine, but she's affiliated with hospitals. But you can imagine that to be able to do telemedicine on the road, connectivity is really critical. Mm-hmm. And so whether you believe that, you're going to, from where do you get internet access? You are seeing that there are networks coming across everywhere. Cellular networks are there nowadays. In many cases, you see Wi-Fi networks. But really, depending on your requirements, there are systems which will give you the ability to put in multiple SIM cards, the ability to merge various data streams. So you can go very high end if you want, but at a very basic level, I think most RVs, the expectation is that they will have robust connectivity, which I think again we've got to make sure we keep looking at OEM partners who will provide us with that connectivity.
Yeah. And I had a feeling these kinds of questions would come up. We have a couple here that, we're talking about the future of RVing, and I think, the connectivity is probably not too far off, but something people really want right now is improved maintainability, improved, ability for the user to get in there and fix parts and do things. And and basically just what's Winnebago doing to kind of bring process improvements to the manufacturer of RVs. I think we talked a little bit about user-centered design when we were in a sidebar earlier.
Correct.
Just talk a little bit about that, how Winnebago is working with the customer.
So I would break this into two pieces. First of all, in manufacture, what happens is in Winnebago, we like to believe that our quality of the RVs we make is among the best in the industry. And while there is definitely a way to go before you reach real automotive quality, as I said, the issue is that for us, because of our small volumes, very often you can't think about some of the processes that the automotive industry uses, like completely automated robotic assembly lines, because they're very capital intensive. And if you're making millions of cars, you can afford that. But if you're making tens of thousands or even 1,000, Winnebago, for example, on the motorhome side, Winnebago. So if you know that Winnebago has the motorized businesses, which is Winnebago and Newmar, and then we have our towables businesses, which is Winnebago Towables and Grand Design. And so if you look at just the Winnebago motorhome, we make, let's just say, around 10,000 RVs. But that's across everything. That's across all models, all ranges, class A, Bs, and Cs, everything. So when you start breaking it up into the smaller platforms, it's pretty small. And therefore, for us, our manufacturing processes are largely manual processes. Yes, we use advanced engineering. We, try and do our best there. So that's the issue with the manufacturing. But when you talk about human-centered design and customer insights, again, we, really like spending a lot of time with customers. And what we believe is that people are not that good at telling you what they're doing. So, if you ask someone, how do you winterize an RV? They'll tell you, oh, yeah, it's easy. Just close this valve, open this, do that. But when you actually observe them in the act of doing something, you gain a lot more insights, because all of a sudden you're seeing that, they are having to hold something with their elbow, or they're trying to get a tool. Two people are getting involved, but they never mention that because they don't think it's anything which is special or different. And that's why, we've had Winnebago teams at SKP's rallies. We've had 10, 12 people over there for days just to talk to customers, observe what they're doing, and bring back, some of the things. So the point about maintainability and manuals, you'll see with our Winnebago Solis, which I think is, an RV that will appeal to a lot of your audience. One of the things we have put in there, the Solis comes with an app, which is a customized app for the Solis, which basically is a how-to Solis app. The idea from the app primarily came from customer feedback, which was exactly the point that was being made about the maintainability. And, Michael Nisler was talking about maintainability, and that's exactly why the feedback came from there. So I think we are continuing to do, some stuff on that. And the other thing I would add is, of course, nowadays, what I'm seeing a lot is that online communities of users are actually becoming so efficient at doing this. When you look at a Facebook group, you look at online communities. I've had a customer tell me that, when something happens, what they do is they call a customer service line, whether it's roadside assistance or Winnebago or a chassis supplier. And then while they're waiting on hold, they'll go onto the Facebook group and type up something. And by the time they actually get through to the service technician, they've already got some reasonable answers. So I think it's a combination of these things, but I agree that, the maintainability and what I call hackability, people are going to hack RVs, they're going to modify them. So how can we be more proactive about acknowledging and helping that? In a house, for example, you can have a stud finder where you can find studs in walls. So you at least know where it's safe, to put in things. Yeah, we don't have those things yet in RVs, but we should, try and see what we can do about that.
Yeah. There are a couple of comments. Mark has one, he'd love to see RVs that were prepped for future upgrades. Since we all know, like, we put antennas on the roof, one day we're going to put a Starlink antenna on the roof. We put solar on the roof. That Jason said that he loved that the new Travato actually has a box on the roof with pre-built openings for cables to go through. So that's, it's a nice feature that kind of gives people that ability to get to the roof without, drilling holes, which is kind of scary.
And I think that's absolutely right, because again, it's sometimes difficult to build in too much upgradability, because how much into the future do you go? But in general, I would say that, yeah, thinking about some of these trends and saying, what do we do about it, I think is a good thing. And as you're seeing, Kathy's just saying, need office space.
Yeah.
What we're also seeing is that people are using RVs for different things. The use cases are changing a lot. Now in the age of COVID, a lot more people are working from the road much more. And so far, when you look at the RVs are basically designed as living spaces, and the working spaces are kind of attached to them. And sometimes it almost is a little bit of an afterthought. But for example, Winnebago, if you look at our Forza, which is a bigger diesel RV, it has a dedicated working place. So I think what we've got to think about is there a case to be made for really an RV which is work centric, and the living areas are around that. But if you just look at the number of hours people spend at work in their vehicles, people are on the road a lot. I mean, for them, you've got to think about this.
I think selfishly, there's definitely an opportunity, because that's kind of what our RV became. We looked for one without a dinette, and we found one with this big credenza, and we basically turned it into two big workspaces. And then that's what the RV became. The living area was a workspace and a bedroom and a bathroom, and then otherwise we weren't here. So
exactly. Yep, you're right. You're right. And when you look at a couple of other trends, one is you look at these smart connected products that I was talking about. Now, what you've got to do with these smart connected products is, if you just think about the technology that enables that analytics or remote monitoring to happen, here's what happens. You've got to have a sensor, because if you don't have a sensor, you don't sense the parameter, whether it's temperature, humidity, vibration, whatever it is. That sensor then needs to send a signal to a unit which is on the RV as some sort of a central controller. And then that central controller can broadcast that data outside of it somewhere. And I think one of your audience was, John was talking about the promise of the Internet of Things. And that's basically these connected systems. So today what's happening is we're in the early stages of building out these things. And sometimes what you can do is Winnebago can retrofit these things around. So if you look at, for example, there's a water level indicator that we have put in the Solis for the system to show you how much fresh water you have. That we are able to do. But something which is related to the engine, you can't really be drilling holes in an engine to do it. And so the chassis supplier has got to provide that. But that's an area we are definitely working on. Also, William Love is talking about these all DC appliances. And this is probably a good segue to talk about electrification a little bit. That when you see all electric vehicles, that Winnebago a couple of years back, we launched an all electric commercial vehicle. So I'm specifically saying commercial versus a consumer RV. So we didn't mean this to be a consumer RV, but we have a division called specialty vehicles that takes the shell of an RV, it industrializes, commercializes it, and people build applications on it, like mobile medical, mobile doctors' offices, things like that. We see electrification as a pretty serious trend. Electrification is coming. It's only a matter of time before it comes into our industry. So we thought that what we wanted to do was get into electrification early and learn the technology, learn how to manufacture, learn how these systems behave, get familiar with it. And I think along with that, you are going to see that it's going to continue to bring in more and more electric appliances. You do see a lot of RVs nowadays. Winnebago RVs, definitely, Travato, Bolt. These come with lithium battery systems that allow you to even run, air conditioners off the grid. So I think we're making progress along that path, and you'll see eventually that we might be able to eliminate a generator. We might be able to eliminate propane on the RV, but it's taking a little bit of time to get there.
Nice, yeah, that's something that everybody sits and watches what Tesla does, and we want to see that get to the RVs one day. My thinking is that as the trucking industry goes electric, then maybe there'll be chassis left around for some RV development in the future.
Oh, I agree with you that what's going to happen is when you look at the large trucks, so when you look at electrification in the consumer car space, definitely, Tesla, the Chevy Bolt, Nissan. There are a lot of vehicles coming up now with electric or hybrid options. And then when you go right to the top, the biggest semi-based trucks, the prime movers, Tesla is in there with their truck. You're seeing there's a company called Nikola, which is doing a hydrogen fuel cell based truck. So there are people who are coming in there. In the mid tier is where you're not yet seeing that much. And so I think it's a matter of time before it comes. And then when you look at electrification, autonomy, it's a continuum. There are stages. So when you think about your dream RV, you were talking about that I'm just going to get in and say, take me to Chicago, and then I'm going to relax and I get out in Chicago. That's the end utopian concept. But there are phases between where we are now and there, and it could even be that you'll have more cruise control. You'll have more lane departure warnings. You'll have the ability to platoon, which is if there is a group of vehicles going, they can go together, maintaining some distance between them so that you really conserve fuel as you're going. So I think there are stages in autonomy that you can think about as you go ahead.
Nice. I'm just kind of looking back at one of Lana's questions back to this, the RV that's an office. I know Lana is also, she works from the road a lot. She'd rather have a sofa that turns into a desk than a bed,
So here's what I'll tell you, Lana and the others on this broadcast. We are seriously working on this project to see how we can design this work van or a work optimized van. And I know that, some companies have just come up and say, hey, it's a work van. We have Wi-Fi, but that's not what we're trying to do. We're really trying to fundamentally deconstruct these vehicles and rethink and see what we can do. So if someone wants to participate and provide us with some feedback, I do know that Winnebago, we work with you guys on a customer panel. We do research with you, but definitely we're looking for people who are going to help us challenge our assumptions and thinking. So I'm listening to these comments pretty carefully.
Nice. Yeah, I know we have quite a few people have built out their own vans that work from the road, and they've, they build them the way they think they need them to be. Let's see. I'm just going to grab some questions. If you guys have questions for Ashish, everything related to RVing and the future of RVing, and then I've got a fun thing that we'll talk about at the end here. Mark has a question that that's a today question, and a fear that every RVer has is fire. Fire is a constant worry. Can we ever expect some built-in fire suppression, something more than just the small little fire extinguisher by the door?
Yeah, I think what we have got to think about in RVs is just sometimes the engineering required to do that and the trade-offs which are there. So whenever you're building an RV, a few things that you're always thinking about. One is just weight, because the more the RV weighs, the more then there is less capacity left for the people, their personal effects, everything else. So weight is a constant worry. And therefore, one of the things we do a lot is think about materials, whether there are more lightweight and better materials we can use. But also there's a trade-off always with cost, right? Because, you could argue that there are lots of aircraft parts which are built with titanium. And if I went and, made some parts of the Winnebago with titanium, it would be great. It would just probably instantly double the cost. And so I think that's where, for something like a fire suppression system, you've got to really think about the cost that it adds in terms of, the modifications you'll have to make, piping, reservoirs, alarm systems. There's a lot of complexity that goes into that. And so that's really the challenge, that whether there are enough customers who are willing to pay for that is really the question. But it's an interesting question. I'm going to, just make a note of Mark's point here.
Yeah, I think another way to look at that is reducing the risk of fires in the first place. Correct. Where you don't have to suppress them, or even Newmar does a really good job with some of their fire exits that are, they actually have a door rather than a window you have to crawl.
Correct. Yeah. And thanks for mentioning that. That's a really good point. That when we welcomed the Newmar company into Winnebago last November. That was indeed one of the features that I thought was a really good feature. It's still, in a big diesel, you are a little high off the ground, but from the back of the RV, the ability to get out quickly, I think is a great answer. And that's, as you're right, that's versus a full fire suppression system. That's a convenient answer, which is somewhere in the middle. It's sort of, supplementing the fire extinguisher. And we need to keep looking for solutions like that.
Then I'm going to talk a little bit more about workstations, because I know everybody's excited about that. So one of William's comments was a kitchen table that can automatically convert to a standing workstation. That'd be nice.
Yeah. I think this is part of a broader trend, which is basically a lot of our audience are asking about multifunctional furniture. We're talking about modules that can do more than one thing.
Yeah.
So if you look at or it'll at least move out of the way. So if you look at a Murphy bed, you can fold the Murphy bed and it goes out of its way. You look at a dinette table, you can fold it up and do something. So what you're basically saying is you're saying, look, my space is very limited. So help me make the best use of the space and make it flexible enough so that I can tailor it to what I want to do when I want to do it. If I want to work, I should be able to work. If I want to eat, I should be able to eat. If I want to sleep, I should be able to sleep.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, what we're talking about.
I think also there's a psychology to it too. One of our things was, at the end of the day, we don't want to look at our work anymore. We want some way to put all of that away, but we also don't want to work on a little tiny laptop. Like, I like dual monitors and I like to have a comfortable place to sit, but I want to be able to just make it all disappear.
Yeah.
Let's see. We've got a lot of questions coming in. Yeah, David makes a really good point. Well, you can't. There's many, us included, 2-worker families. So a lot of these RVs, they'll come with a space for one desk up in the front or something. But they don't often think about actually 2 people sitting there working full time all day long.
Yeah, and that's really a good point, because right now what I see is either people do extensive modifications to their RVs to accommodate the 2 people working, or then one person's in the front, the other person either on the driver's seat, they've done some modifications to sit there, or they're in the back near the bed area, and it's not really that convenient. I think the thing is that when you look at a Class B, a van, basically a Travato, Bolt, Solis, that kind of a model, you're really limited by the physical envelope of the van. And these things don't come with slide outs or anything else, so you're really limited by that envelope. And I think when you move to a little bit of a bigger vehicle, then you're able to see some of the things, the ability to do some of that. But no, I think that's a valid point of thinking about having 2 workstations, or the ability to have 2 workplaces.
I think just 2 weeks ago we had a little happy hour cocktail mixer, and we had Denny and Veronica on. And Denny and Veronica went from a large Class A toy hauler, one of the Outlaw RVs, the Thor Outlaw, down to a Sprinter van. And they worked full time, 8 hours a day, on the clock all the time. And they showed us how they had, one had the passenger seat set up for them with a swing out monitor, and the other one had the back part of the bed set up for them. And they were squeezing two full-time workers into a Sprinter van. So that was pretty interesting to see.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got some different technical questions, so I'm gonna throw them at you, see what happens. So Mark's question is, why aren't the chassis alternators upgraded or used for battery charging on a much larger scale?
So what happens with alternatives, of course, is that if you see the Winnebago vehicles which are equipped with a lithium system, we do have a second alternator that we've put in. And what it does is basically when the lithium system charge goes down below a certain level, the second alternator clicks in, and then it charges the lithium system. What happens is again, it goes back to some of the basic dynamics of the RV industry, which is that we are so small in the number of units that we make that the chassis companies don't do anything custom for us. For example, if you look at the Sprinter van, Winnebago is one of the biggest customers of the Sprinter van in the world, but the Sprinter van is the same van that is used over here in Europe, in South Africa, in Asia Pacific. It's the same platform. It's a global platform, and so they don't make any modifications for special use cases. And if you think about where a lot of these chassis are used, someone was talking about these 20th century chassis and 21st century interiors. I think these are used mainly for commercial applications. So last mile deliveries, freight applications, in-city applications. So if they're going to optimize for anything, they would rather optimize for that, because that's where they get a big chunk of their volume versus optimizing for RV. So that's just, the unfortunate reality of where we are. But if you look at their markets as well, it's justified when you see the volume that they're getting. Right? So you can't really blame them for doing that, but that doesn't help us when we are on the receiving end of it.
Yeah, I was actually going to drop that question in with this. So basically, I mean, you're pretty much at the whims of the chassis manufacturer. You don't really have a lot of say at all when it
Correct.
comes to.
So I would say that we do work with them, and as a close working partner, typically we work with them long before the chassis is launched. So we do get to see test units, which is a year ahead of time. We do get to see early prototype units. In the case of Mercedes, we'll go to Germany. In the case of Ford, we'll go to Detroit. Dodge, we'll go to them. So we are I wouldn't say that we aren't connected. And when you have a developer partnership program, we do get a lot of access to seeing this. I'm just saying that if you come up with something which is very specific to the RV industry, that's where I think it's just unlikely to get adopted because of the small volumes that we have.
I could see that. Paul Klein had a question. Can you tell him more about the Winnebago N series that he just got a letter about?
Yeah, I think what we are doing is, we continue to look at our product portfolio, and we are looking at a new diesel platform that's coming out. And the N series is going to be one of the anchor models in that diesel portfolio. It's still, being developed. You will see units coming sometime soon, and we are all excited to see what it does. And now, as you know, in the Winnebago family, having Winnebago and Newmar, I think the combination of those companies means that we've got a significant capability in Class A's, whether you look at the diesels, whether you look at gas, and we hope to keep building on that portfolio.
Now, one of the things we have a Newmar. One of the things I liked about them was that they always tried things. They tried weird little things. Right. They did a mid-engine toy hauler diesel pusher, and they did one with the little tiny. It had a normal bedroom, but then it had the back deck that would fold down, and those were they were cool little things. I felt like they're probably never going to catch on, but they tried, and
Correct.
I like that.
Yeah, when we were looking at Newmar, so I had the privilege of leading the Newmar acquisition. When we were working at them, so we were looking at Newmar pretty closely, and that's one of the things we really liked. It's that the focus on innovation, it's the focus on customer service and quality, and that's one of the things that gelled with us a lot in Winnebago, because we think we're focused on similar things. And you're right, you have to keep trying these things. Some of them will work, some of them won't, but keep talking to your customers, really obsess about what the customers are saying, and then go from there.
Nice. I've seen a couple comments about air conditioning. I know for a lot of our users, a lot of our members, we do a lot of off-grid camping. So power is at a premium, but we also like to be comfortable. So some people have talked about mini split ACs. Pilot here is saying that, the HVAC system just really needs an upgrade in general.
Yeah. So again, I would say that it's, I seem to be a little bit like a stuck record on this, but what we have is in the RV industry is we have a group of OEMs, and they're doing the best that they can. But when you look at home ACs and when you look at split ACs, which are consumer ACs, there might be ACs which are more efficient and better, quieter, etc. It's just some of them aren't available to us right now. And what you see is that that's why I think as you go forward, you're going to see more work being done to say that out of my existing plant, out of my existing air conditioning, how can I get better efficiency, better airflow? And sometimes it's a matter of putting in an insert. Sometimes it's a matter of routing the air differently, and there might be things that you'll be able to do. But I think yes, that comfort piece, both from the power consumption as well as the noise, vibration, being able to work off the grid, electric capability, 48-volt appliances. I think some of those things are coming, and I think the customers' voices are getting louder and louder about that, and hopefully that registers with some of the air conditioning OEMs.
Yeah, I know we've all had a chance to yell at Domenic a few times at
yes, that's right.
Some of our events, and they enjoy it. But yeah, those are the kinds of things we bring up. Yeah, David's mentioning that he'd love to see more industry standard platforms rather than proprietary stuff. Like build things around the Amazon Alexa, build things around the Nest, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. Like let those companies be good at that and figure out a way that they can work with these devices.
I think one of the things I'll say is that when you look at the amount of electronics, software, and sensors that are in modern day automobiles and RVs compared to even 10 years back. I mean, if you look at a passenger car, 10 years back, a passenger car had 50 sensors. Today's average car has 200 sensors. A car is becoming very rapidly a computer on wheels. And so what's happening is that, again, it's going up that learning curve that many of your community, the Escapees members, might be very adept at, stitching these things together. I think the RV industry and Winnebago, honestly, is learning to do that. We are doing some experiments, but if you think about it, our heritage has always been in mechanical engineering. We know how to build the best RVs, and I can't tell you how many times we get, unsolicited letters from customers which says, I was in a horrible crash, and the trooper who pulled me out, he said the only reason you survived was you had Winnebago's steel superstructure around you. So we're pretty good at doing that. I think this is a transition for us where now in future the things you've got to learn about are electronics, software, data, connectivity, analytics, cloud. I mean, these are new technologies, new skills, and we're learning. So I think it's a journey that we're on, and hopefully we get better at it pretty quickly.
Nice. Yeah, I keep seeing different comments from Kathy. So Kathy's Travis's mom, and Travis and Mel have the new Horizon, and so she says that's beautiful and modern, and we a lot of our members like it as well because it's a more contemporary style inside. It's not kind of what shade of brown would you like? It's actually
So it's interesting again when you look at something like the Horizon. You need a company who is willing to push the boundaries. You need a company where even your dealers may not be very supportive when you're developing it. They might say, "Oh no, I don't think that's going to work." I mean, a few years back, when B vans started coming in, there were many significant dealers who said, "Oh, this is just a passing fad; it's going to go nowhere." And they were speaking from their perspective because they didn't really have the ability to see that much ahead. But you guys were really seeing it and pushing it. And so Winnebago, one of my favorite stories I always talk about to demonstrate Winnebago's innovativeness is Winnebago actually built an RV on a helicopter. So this was called a Winnebago Heli Home. And before you fall over laughing, I mean, this was real. These guys built 5 or 6 units.
Have a picture of it.
They took it to the industry trade show. They sold a couple, and to me it's great because it just shows the ability to push the boundaries. It just shows the ability of an engineering team to think outside the box. And if you just think about that conversation somewhere in Winnebago, many years back, where a product developer came to the head of engineering and said, boss, I think we should develop a helicopter-based RV. And he kind of looked into the distance and steepled his fingers and he said, yep, I think that's a really good idea. Let's do it. So I think that's impressive, and it's great to be a part of a company that's willing to push the boundaries on that.
Yeah, the Helihome looks pretty awesome, and now we need like a drone RV, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. If you look at the Revel, right? I mean, you look at the Revel, and when we came out with the Revel, there was really nothing like it. I mean, nobody was coming and saying, please give me a shorter wheelbase sprinter with a raised suspension and a bed that goes up and down at the back, which I'm going to take off the grid. But we are privileged to have product managers who are very much in tune with what customers' unmet needs are, and that's where we built it. And as we are seeing, the reaction has been terrific from customers.
Yep, we've seen quite a few of them. I've seen a few at some of our events. Yeah, it's pretty cool just kind of watching how things have changed. I know when we bought, the 40-foot diesel pusher was the gold standard for full timing, and then we sold that and went to 30 feet. And Kathy actually mentioned earlier that, she would love to see all the bells and whistles of a 40-foot RV or 45-foot RV or Horizon in a 30-foot RV, so that you can get into those small places.
So, Kathy, one of the things I'm seeing, and maybe this is a trend that we are looking at, is this trend of downsizing, where there are a lot of people who've been in the larger RVs, but maybe as they're getting older, as their usage patterns are changing, they're saying, I don't need that much of place. I'm pretty content. And you were talking about, someone who had downsized from a fifth wheel, a big RV to a smaller one. That's a trend that I'm definitely seeing, that people are moving into the smaller RVs. But at the same time, they're saying, look, my budget is still not getting half. I still have the money to spend. So why don't you then upgrade interiors, give me a better decor, give me better things. And that's what I think we really need to figure out is, what are some of those systems that we can provide.
Yeah, I think it was is it the Newmar New Air? We were up in Napanee, Indiana, and we drove out. It was right when that came out, and we saw one of those right in front of us. It was like 34 feet long, and it had all the bells and whistles, and we're like,
Correct.
Oh man, in 10 years, when that's affordable for me, I'm gonna buy one of those. Like
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Nice. So, have you seen a surge in orders due to COVID? Have you seen? I mean, I know the market took a big hit at first, but
yeah. So Winnebago, we were one of the first RV companies to close our operations when this hit, and the reason was we care for our people very much, and we did not want to expose anybody to any unnecessary risk. So we closed the factories. For the initial few weeks, we were paying everybody full salary and benefits. Then we went into a bit of a hiatus period, and now we're back. What we are definitely seeing is a lot more interest in RVs, because people are seeing these RVs as a safe cocoon, in which you can either travel or work. Because mainly what I'm hearing from people is, I know who's coming in and out. I know that I can disinfect it, and basically I've got a restroom, I've got a bed. I've got a working space and a cooking space. And so while these are not new to RVs, there's a whole wider group of people who are saying, wow, get me one of those. And so we're hearing about a lot more traffic at dealerships. We're definitely hearing about a lot more first-time buyers coming in. And I think that's going to be interesting for the RV industry, because as all of you know, there is a certain learning curve with how to get efficient using an RV. I mean, one of the things that I do when I come into a new industry is, when I joined Winnebago, I'd never worked in the RV industry before. My previous companies were companies like Honeywell, Moog, and Motorola Solutions, and Bain and Company. But the way you do it is you go and use the products. And so I went to Forest City, Iowa, and I said, okay, I'm going to take one of your RVs. Just give me the keys and show me where you fill gas, and I'm going to head out, and I'm going to take it to Minneapolis. And all of you, experienced RVers, you know what that meant. I mean, I did bring it back in one piece. Nothing happened to the RV, but it wasn't a very smooth process. This was a View Navion type RV, which is a sprinter-based RV. It's terrific, but you need to understand how those underlying systems are built out and how they work. And so I think with the new RVers, what's going to happen is that they're going to need a lot more support and education to be able to become effective. Otherwise, they might just have a bad experience initially, and then they might just say, it's not worth the hassle. So we'll see, but we are definitely seeing a surge, and we'll see how it plays out. How COVID plays out. Hopefully, we find a vaccine soon. Hopefully, things go back to normal. But with all this uncertainty about schools and many companies saying, don't have to come into work from office, work from outside, I think those are two drivers as well. I'm seeing for people to go get an RV. And I met a person recently who said, hey, I've got 2 kids. I'm just going to put them in an RV and take them. They're going to see America for the next year, and I'm going to work from the road, because anyway, that's what my company has told me. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, we've actually we've got 2 friends, or 2 of Krenza's friends, that have actually contacted us because they're looking at renting an RV because they have family far away. They don't want to stay in hotels on the way there, and then when they get there, they need somewhere to stay. So they're pinging us, asking us about renting. I know my dad was even looking at renting an RV to figure out how to get out here to Colorado.
Yeah, but not, at the moment, what I'm really seeing is that, till the end of summer, I'm not seeing too many RVs being available because everything is just booked out. But, hopefully, again, they're able to build up some inventory and, see what they can do.
Nice. Now, have you, here's a question here. Have you seen more of an ask for higher profile chassis for dirt roads, for off-grid camping?
Yeah, I would say the Revel, is our first move into a higher profile chassis, higher suspension, a little bit of a stiffer suspension. People are definitely going places, and, I can show you some videos of where the Revel has gone, which are absolutely fascinating. One of our customers took it to Bolivia, to the salt flats, and he got stuck in the salt flats up to the axles, and it was 5 days before the next person came by to pull him out. But yeah, he was very happy, and he was fine. Not everybody's going to do that, but there is definitely this need for vehicles that can go a little bit more. Maybe it's not completely dirt roads, but let's just say unpaved roads. Roads which are a little bit rougher, and those are things we're working on, and seeing the reaction that we've had from the Revel. I think we'll continue looking at this seriously and see what we can do. It's just that I think with the bigger vehicles, what happens is because of the span of the chassis, if the front and the back are at different levels too much, that causes some strain on the chassis from a mechanical perspective. So you just need to be a little careful with that.
Yeah, I've taken my 30-foot motorhome down some roads that some people wouldn't take their car on, and I hear it creaking and popping, and well, I shouldn't say that too loud because I might sell it to one of these people one day. But it would be nice if it was a little more capable at that.
Correct.
Let's see, what else do we have here? The Heli-Home is really cool, and I definitely want to find one of those. We need to have it fly into Escapade one year.
Yeah. So I would say that one of the things, a trend, which is, again, whether this is futuristic or not, but I'm really looking at that, is that human-centered design. How do you make interfaces which are more intuitive, which are easy to understand? And you guys talked about Alexa. You guys talked about things like Nest thermostats. These things, you don't need a big user manual. I mean, in the RV industry, we're still at the stage where you get the black bag with 15 pounds of documentation and 6 remote controls, and you figure it out. So I think that's an area where I'd like to see a lot more work, which is how do you make these vehicles and the systems more intuitive? And the challenge we have there is that because there are so many different systems from different suppliers, just knitting that together into something that's very cohesive, that's easy, requires a lot of engineering work. It's not that easy to do.
Yeah. It seems like you need to get a lot of people talking to each other and to kind of work together rather than hiding all their cards and trying to
exactly
keep each other.
Yes.
Yes. John had a question related to all this this idea of a lot more campers coming out. Does Winnebago have any is Winnebago getting involved at all in increasing camping through parks?
So there are certain things that we do. One is, of course, with the National Parks Foundation. We do have a partnership, and we work with them, and we are providing some help to them. you've of course seen that, the Great Outdoors Act has been passed, and so in the last couple of days, and so there's a lot more funding which is coming, and which is definitely a great thing, and it's long overdue. Because again, when you think about America, why do we have the biggest RV market in the world? Look at our road systems. It's just this amazing countrywide network that we've got. And you look at the RV parks, every army base has an RV park, every state and national park has an RV park. So I would say in the short term, we are not actually thinking of, building RV parks or participating. Although if you come to Forest City, you do know that we have a pretty nice RV park where we used to have our annual rally, where about 1,000 RVers came. What we do see is that there are the emergence of these new sharing economy models. So you've got, Hip Camp, you've got, other harvest hosts, you've got other things coming up. But I think capacity is something which in the industry, it is going to be addressed as you go ahead, because otherwise it's going to become a constraint on the industry growth itself.
Yeah. So I see a lot of, so John's a friend of mine he's got a 35 foot Newmar Ventana, and he's followed me up some of these same roads. He's on a second engine now, but not because of that. But yeah, I do see some more comments about, having documentation electronically, basically modernizing all that documentation, making it the way everything else is. When you get a
correct
Apple product or whatever other product, you can get everything you need online.
No, I agree. And it hopefully shouldn't be that difficult, right? I mean, it's just a matter of most suppliers already provide documentation electronically. So it's a matter of, compiling them. We need to see what we can do about that. But I take the point definitely about electronic documentation and, something that's easily accessible on a mobile phone, because again, today, the primary way people access information is on a mobile phone, a cell phone, a smartphone. So you need to think about that and what you can do.
Nice. So what I would like to close with is, we've got a few more years on this planet. What are we going to see in our lifetime in RVing? It's going to blow our minds.
So, as they say, the more things change, the more they remain the same. So what I mean by that is that at the core, RVing is not going to change. It's about going out and, spending time in the great outdoors. I'm based in Minnesota. You're going to Lake Superior, North Shore, going to see Itasca State Park, where you can walk across the Mississippi River. I mean, that's the essence of what we do, right? So that's not going to change. Spending time with, family and friends outdoors, that's not going to change. I think what is going to change is that these vehicles are going to become a lot more energy efficient. It's going to become a lot more, easy to use. You will be able to be off the grid more. You will see autonomous a lot more. And so those are some of the trends which I definitely see coming. But as we've said, it's a mixture of things, because electronic documentation isn't something which is a revolutionary ask from anybody. But we don't have it today. So maybe what we need to think about is, how do we do this in parallel? That let's go along the direction to autonomous. But in the meantime, can I please have a split AC and can I get electronic documentation? I think that would be a good objective to work
on. We're hoping that you'll just do that.
That's right, exactly.
The hover RV of the future, we need that too. I know someone was asking, are you guys working on, well, you won't tell me, but are you working on anything related to the Cybertruck? Do you got a trailer to match the Cybertruck, or a slide-in camper for Elon Musk's truck?
Yeah. No, I think, companies like Tesla or other companies, they're basically right now extremely busy with their core business. And so it goes back, it's like the Sprinter that, for someone who's designing the next generation Sprinter, I mean, how many RVs are going to be bought, which are all electric, right? So I think, again, what's going to happen for us is we're going to have to take their standard solutions and see how we can adapt them to our use. And maybe it's even a subsystem. Maybe there are Tesla batteries and battery controllers which we end up adapting for use in RVs. Maybe that changes things a lot. So I think there are things that we will think about. But it's definitely an exciting time to be working in the RV industry. There's a lot happening. Winnebago is the brand that people know the most. It's really the category defining brand in RVs. And we think we've got a team of people who are continuing to push the boundaries in terms of how we can make these things better and how we can satisfy you guys, because you guys are very demanding. You do ask for a lot of stuff, and for us that's invigorating. That's challenging, because if your customer doesn't do that, then it's not that interesting to work with them.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure all of these people, whenever we have an event again and Winnebago's back there, they'll come talk to you, or come talk to your people that are there. They'll come share
Correct.
their stories and their.
Correct. Yeah, and when you look at Winnebago, I mean, David is asking about, are you guys going to do any innovations on the towable side as well? So on the towable side, we have two businesses, which is Grand Design RV and Winnebago Towables. And Grand Design RV, one of the reasons we acquired Grand Design in the first place, and I led that acquisition for Winnebago as well in 2016, was we really liked the company. They are building really solid RVs. They've been able to grow the business very fast. And if you look at the Winnebago Towables, they recently came out with something called the Hike, which has an exoskeleton. And actually, the Escapees members did provide a lot of inputs into that product. So we're definitely focused on innovation there. And when I look at the towables, what I see in the towables is there's a lot more work that's being done on integration between the towable and the tow vehicle. So between, say, a Ford F-150 and a towable, much smarter connections and connectivity, data and power being changed. You probably saw the new F-150 that has a generator on board. It's a work generator. And so how do you connect that? For example, when the RV is traveling, when the trailer is traveling, can you use motors in the wheels to really generate electricity and charge the generator or a lithium battery? I think you'll keep seeing things like this. So overall, the energy consumption in an RV, it's extremely complex, because you have so many systems generating electricity, so many systems storing, and so many systems consuming, that energy is just, by far the most complex system. So you'll see a lot of work on energy, I think, as you go forward.
And I think our people would like that, because every one of us, as soon as we get it, we start talking about solar. And I know when I got my solar set up 4 years ago, it was excessive and huge, and now it's considered a starter system.
Yeah.
And we do have members who have taken, one member, Mio, he's taken an entire Tesla battery pack from a car and put it in his Prevost bus. So he powers his bus and then anyone else who's parked around him.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So if you have that larger footprint, I think that's where the Winnebago all-electric vehicles that we have built are 33 foot and 38 foot. So it's basically a Class A on a Ford chassis derivative. When you have that big of a footprint, you have the place and the carrying capacity, for example, to put in a Tesla battery pack. But in a Class B or a smaller Class C, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to do that. So that's the challenge.
We did have Link, one of our other members. He put part of a Tesla battery pack in a travel trailer. So he was.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I didn't see that one in person, but I know he did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's lots of crazy stuff going on. I mean, even our own event trailer, we went a little insane with the power on it, because we wanted to be able to power parties anywhere in the world.
Yep. Exactly.
We were going to bring it to the Winnebago rally, but didn't happen.
Yeah. So I think for us, this is why this relationship, with this partnership and spending the time with the customers, is so exciting, because there are a lot of innovations that you guys do. For us, we drive RVs a little bit, but you guys drive it for tens of thousands of miles, hundreds of thousands of miles, and the insights that you have and the requirements that you have, the more we hear about these and the more we understand that, that's where I think the real thrill of developing the RV, and that's where we can be focused. And that's why whenever we get a chance, we try and spend as much time that we can with customers. You always learn something new that you didn't know before.
Nice. Well, we'll try to do our part and make more RV customers, and then you guys can make more RVs.
Sounds
and
good.
Then chassis manufacturers will start listening, and then we'll take it over.
That sounds like a great partnership.
Yeah. So before we end here, it's been about an hour. If anybody else has any last minute questions, drop them quick. Do you have any closing thoughts you want to leave us with, or anything else you want to?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been really great talking to you guys. So thank you again for inviting me to join you today. Winnebago is one of the leading RV companies in the industry, and we really pride ourselves on our approach to quality, innovation, and service. What we want to do is we want to be a really customer-led, customer-obsessed company. So when you look at the future of RVing, whether you're talking about electrification, electric appliances, autonomous, human-centered design, there are a lot of exciting things which will come. But at the core, what we want to be able to do is just build great products. Build products which you guys will appreciate, enjoy, and really push to the boundaries. And so just keeping this discussion going, whether it's on the future of RVing or whether it's on the RVs of today, would be terrific. So thank you so much. And again, the project that we're doing on the work van, if anybody wants to give us some feedback and challenges on that, I have taken some of the notes that we've discussed. That would be terrific. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm sure if this video is going to be on Facebook for a long time. So if you guys have comments about Work Van and people that are watching the replays, if you want to, if you have ideas for working on the road, drop them here, and Ashish can still see them here, and we can pass them along as well. And yeah, we talk to Winnebago all the time as part of our partnership, so we can always pass your comments along as well. So it's been great talking to you, and I want to show the picture of the heli home one more time because Chris showed up late, but there it is. And I think you need those outfits when you fly it too.
Yes, that's right.
So yeah, it's been fun. We can talk about the future forever, and I'm excited to see what comes.
Yeah.
So thanks for
thank you again.
And thanks everybody for your questions. And if you got more insight on working from the road in an RV, drop them in the comments and we'll pass it along. So see you guys next week for something else. Bye.